Hello there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I thought, if not now, when? My little bunny ears headband here. This is one of the two that I got from Ulta. They're selling these makeup headbands, and I got that other one that's the little blue polka dot bow. And truly, you could use any band to keep your hair out of your face while you're doing makeup, but why not have a little fun with it? In today's video, I am doing a full face of e.l.f. products. As e.l.f. does, they seem to just on a regular basis roll out a ton of new products. They're one of the brands that I get asked about the most. I literally have like a basket full of things here that I've been playing with lately, and I thought you guys might be interested too, so let's hop in here. I've got a Prep and Blur stick, and this says sheer, and then I also got another one that says Prep and Glow stick. I'm just going to show you real quick on the Prep and Glow stick. What this is, it's a very slick, slippery kind of stick. It sort of feels like their Prep and Hydrate balm, although it's very fragranced. It smells almost perfumey. There is kind of this dewy sheen to it, but you look closely and it's just a sheer wash of like a kind of goldeny glitter, albeit very fine glitter, but glitter nonetheless. So unless you want that just all over your face as a prep step, I don't really love that product. Now the Prep and Blur stick looks a little bit more like a milk blur stick. This does have a very balmy texture. It's got sort of a thicker feel, and I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of take this straight from the stick, especially around the nose and sides of the nose where pores are kind of a deal, and then I'll also take it across the forehead as well. This product I feel could use a little more smoothness because you really do feel some pull and drag across the skin. But for small targeted areas of the skin, I have enjoyed the effect, like right around the nose. Once you sort of get it blended in or, you know, tapped or pressed into the skin, I think you will feel more silkiness and smoothness. Next up, we got a lot going on. I've got an e.l.f. foundation on hand here that I've had before. This is actually a really good foundation. I mean, it's a solid, works for me foundation. The shade is Sand. It has SPF 15, and I think it's called their Flawless Finish foundation, although they don't put that on the bottle. But a couple of new elements that I have here are the Make Me Matte powder, which is sort of marketed as a mix-in powder. And I have tried mixing it into my foundation. Yesterday I did it just like kind of on my hand, and I really sort of struggled with it, like between my fingers, the powder, the foundation got really messy. And then I forgot, oh yeah, I did order this little mixing palette from e.l.f. So this is adjustable here, and you can just kind of slide it on your hand. And I'm gonna be using that to mix a little scoop of this. They say to use the scooper that's in here. There is a slider across the sifter, and then in addition to just little holes that you usually see, you know, powder sifting out of, there's also a little well there, a little thing you can dip into with your scoop. So I'm going to do that second. The first thing I'm going to do is get a pump or so of this on my little palette here. Yeah, I think one pump should do it. So that's what that looks like. Then I'm going to dip in to my powder here, get what probably would level off to be one scoop. Dump that on. It's actually just baking soda. That's what it feels like though. I'm going to just mix this with my, whoa, okay. Okay. The powder is so light, and I noticed this yesterday, like it is a little tough to mix it because it just wants to kind of explode everywhere. Ultra lightweight, silky smooth powder, but you kind of got to find a way to control it. So I think I've got it actually mostly mixed in there. So I'm going to start taking this across my skin. And maybe I'll have a more effective matte element to my foundation now that I got it, I think, blended in better to the product today than I did yesterday. Just, you know, using my hand and kind of struggling with it. Although the thing is, this foundation is sort of, I would classify it as overall matte on its own. But sometimes as products get more and more matte, it can help the coverage some, so we'll see how this does. I'm going to use my Airbrush Complexion brush here from Ecotools. Yeah, I feel like this is actually a lot more matte than the other day. The product, just to blend it in, it does look a little thicker on my skin right now than I'm used to this foundation looking. You know, it just feels a little stiffer to blend out with the brush. And that makes sense because we basically, you know, as opposed to diluting the product, we kind of thickened it up with the powder we added. From a distance, I think everything kind of looks quite good, actually, very even. Looking up close at the skin, I feel like it looks rather makeup-y. Like, I feel like I can just see it quite a bit around the nose and sides of the nose. It's not terrible, but I feel like if my skin were any drier than it is right now, it might be pretty bad. I think the reality is for me that if I'm looking for a really matte full coverage foundation, I'm gonna be more likely to just grab for it like as is, find that product, put it on in one step, as opposed to really having to mix a powder into the foundation, because this is kind of messy. It's a little high maintenance to work with, but it does deliver on, I think, making the foundation even more matte, and therefore a little more full coverage, but also in the process a little heavier looking on the skin too. Okay, I'm gonna pop a concealer on here. I did not buy a new one. I have the lightweight concealer. I think this is from their Beautifully Bare line. I remember reviewing this months back and thinking, you know, they call it lightweight concealer, but it's kind of heavy on the skin. Like you really feel some thickness going across the skin with this. The coverage is okay. I'm just gonna take this around my under eye and anywhere else where I need it. Around the nose maybe. Yeah, it's really interesting that they chose the name lightweight because this is sort of heavy, thick. Honestly, this shade is probably a little bit on the light side for me to really effectively cover under eye darkness. So I won't hold my shade choice against the product here, but I'm just saying I think it might do a better job on me if it was just a little bit darker. Kind of like what I found with my Makeup Revolution concealer. Really made a world of difference. Next up, here's something new that I just had to try. Little loose powder here for the under eye area. It is the Peach Tone, like under eye setting powder. Looks like a very standard little mini loose powder here. I'm gonna tap some off into the cap. And it looks at a glance just a little deep. Not sure if you're able to pick up on that, but it's a pretty potent looking peach color. But what I have noticed is as I use it on the skin, I get it on a brush and I try to get my brush somewhat evenly coated so I don't have big chunks on there. Once I start dabbing it in, I don't really see that depth of color quite so much. Although this is a step in my makeup where I really do want it to be brightening. You know, instead of my concealer being too light and the setting powder verging on being a little bit dark, I'd like it to be the other way around. I'd like my concealer to really, you know, be the skin tone match, and the powder that I put over to, if anything, just brighten the whole situation further. I think that's where it all happens most effectively. And sometimes I have found when I do set the under eye with anything that's a little too dark, like if I would have really heavily applied this and then checked it out later in the day, sometimes the whole area can look a little bit deeper as time goes on, which is sort of a scary thing. So I'm not sure what I was expecting out of this powder. I think if it were a little lighter, it might have been a nice little, you know, finishing touch step. But for me, this shade is just a little bit deep. But man, do I look matte right now. Now I got a bunch of things, really all the blushes and a bronzer from their new Primer Infused line. So these are powders, but they say they're primer infused. I pulled up the website here to give you a little more detail. This Longwear Matte Bronzer is infused with lock-on primer powder to ensure a full day of bronze sun-kissed glow. This bronzer is smooth and easy to apply while adhering to the skin for long-lasting wear. Basically what we have here is a powder that feels kind of rich and creamy. You know, it feels really, really nice. And you know what all this stuff reminds me of, the blushes too, and this bronzer? It reminds me so much of their Pressed Mineral products back when they had that. Remember, they had Pressed Mineral bronzers, they had the Pressed Mineral blushes, and they were just the smoothest, most nicely pigmented things. This really feels like that formula all over again, as opposed to being light, dusty, chalky. There's a real nice creaminess to it. You put your finger in it and you just feel like you've actually picked up a nice thickness of product there. And what's also kind of interesting to me about this is, like, I put my brush in it and it doesn't kick up a bunch of powdery fallout either. So I have Forever Sunkissed in the bronzer, and I believe this was the lightest shade. I just wasn't quite sure which to choose, so I went with this one. And it is super duper light on my skin, like it barely shows. For a fair skin person, this might be just like exactly what you've been looking for, but I'm gonna use it anyway here. See if you can see it a little bit if I use it in the cheekbone area. Kind of. Yeah, I've got it almost concentrated on certain areas for it to show up well enough, but I would certainly be interested in trying, you know, a couple of the deeper shades that they offer, because I think there's 3. So very soft and subtle bronzer, but I love what's happening with the formula of that product. Then I got the blushes, and I don't know why I had such a hunch that these were going to be great, but I just thought they would be really good. So I did get all 4, and the blushes, you know, are pretty big for a blush. Like, that size for a bronzer didn't really shock me, but these are large, pigmented, wonderful blushes. And they're all matte, by the way. And this one's called Always Fiery, very pigmented, kind of orangey toned. I've got this interesting deeper one called Always Spicy, kind of a brown mixed with a little rust in that shade. Always Rosy is probably the safest option from this line, just your classic kind of dusty rose blush. And then, surprisingly enough, this shade shows up really beautifully on my skin. It's called Always Cheeky. You might not think it, right? I'm gonna go ahead and use that one so you can actually see. Like, this color actually shows on my skin, this really light shade. It's more pigmented than you would think. That is like the softest, most subtle, like baby blush. Oh. Yeah, that shade really excites me. It's so unexpected that it would show up that well. And then, because you might be curious, I'm gonna take this deep color here, just a little. Just give myself a little cheekbone depth right over here. I just think those blushes feel fantastic. They are a wonderful matte blush formula. So that was a really great find in my little haul of stuff. Then I got the little collaboration highlighter thing here from That's Heart. And that's super exciting for her. This is a really cool little split pan, like glowy bronzer. And you know, this is definitely a highlight. This could act as like kind of an all over face glow. I found that it had more of a bronzing effect on me than, you know, that lighter bronzer that I use. But I kind of like taking that shade and just gently dusting it all over, like even tops of the cheeks, just everywhere. Gives a nice, just little bit of bronzy sheen to the skin. And the texture on these powders also, can't argue with them. Very creamy, very pigmented. Frankly, they'd be great eyeshadows too if you wanted to. But then I'm gonna take this shade here and we'll do a little highlight. Woo! Very, very glowy. I'm gonna make sure I buff it into the skin. My look needed some highlight because I am looking real matte. Really fantastic highlighter there. I love that. There's one more thing. Oh, I almost forgot. I got this Power Glow highlighter. I have this in rose gold. This is interesting. I wanted to kind of describe this to you. I don't know, I might throw a little on, but you've got a pump. And instead of this being like comparable to, let's say, a Becca, you know, liquid shimmering skin perfector, this has an odd kind of, it looks super metallic first off, and it has this sort of oily feel to it. When I first got it, I pumped out a good amount because I felt like maybe the product wasn't mixing well enough in there. You know how some things come out looking a little separated, so I pumped a lot out and I felt like I was getting what the product was truly supposed to be. And it's just this ultra metallic yet kind of oily feeling highlighter. I might pat just a little bit on here just to let you see. But this rose gold, you know, there's a little depth to it. If I were to lay that on my skin really thick, you know, it would actually maybe look a little dark when it's not hitting the light. But, you know, really lightly applying it, my skin does not feel real tacky or anything. It's just a feeling that I've never really seen come from a liquid highlighter before. Like if you've got very oily skin naturally, this feels like an oil. Need you guys to maybe use a little imagination here. I'm doing curls with the biggest moisturizers I could find. Okay, now I feel I can use the post-workout cool down mist. That's right, friends, they've got a whole line of things that look like neon yellow. I haven't tried a lot of them, but I am gonna try this post-workout cool down mist just to see, you know, does it really cool me down? The sprayer felt like it was spraying out a lot. I see some droplets on my skin, but not too bad. Gosh, I feel like I look pretty glowy. It smells actually very fresh and like just verging on a body spray sort of. A little hint of fresh floral. I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't have to use this post-workout. You could just use it after you've been, you know, blending really hard. That's one of those classic, don't hate it, don't really love it. I want to know how much they're charging for that. Post-workout cool down mist is going to be $8. This makeup mist and set that they also sell is only $4. You are getting 0.7 ounces more. If we're really taking the purpose of that very literally, like when I'm post-workout, I'm not rushing for a setting spray. I'm rushing for a water and a couch. I got this thing that says New Eye and Brow Pencil, and I have it in neutral brown. This is what it looks like. Like it could not be a more classic pencil, although it does have the little sharpener in the cap, which is cool because sometimes, you know, I just get lazy and I use a really dull pencil because I don't want to look for the sharpener. I was using this yesterday and I found it to be a very, very creamy pencil. Like I normally expect things in this format to be just more on the dry side, and this was quite creamy, which sometimes scares me a little because I don't like to deposit too much product, and also this does not come with a spoolie. So usually the creamier the product that I'm putting in my brows, the more I find a spoolie pretty important. Now, fortunately, I do have just this little freestanding spoolie thing from Sigma, or, you know, many brow pencils do have a spoolie you could use with anything on the opposite end of the, you know, the color product. Just something to be aware of here. That color seems really right for me, doesn't it? Oops. I just maybe go in after that with a little, like, setting gel. If for your preference you feel like a lot of like standard classic brow pencils are way too dry, then maybe you'll like this because it's really creamy. But for me, like, it became a little hard to control, honestly. Like, I felt like I was getting way too much in there. I am gonna set them. I'm just gonna grab this little CoverGirl gel here just to set it a little. Okay, my friends, I've got two eye palettes. One is safe, one is not so safe. I think I'm gonna do the not so safe one, but I'll just show you though. I have this chromatic eyeshadow palette. This is in the shade Bird of Paradise. It's pretty. It's my jam, it's my style. It looks good on, I have worn it before. There's this pretty purple kind of pop there, like soft lilac-y purple. You got a burgundy, sort of warm neutrals over on this end. So I like that palette. Comes with a little brush, nice mirror. Really no complaints. But they've got a new Mad for Matte palette, and I want to show you that. It's called Jewel Pop. Boom! You've got warm colors, you've got blues and purples and kind of reddish, got a green in there. I did a look the other day with the blue and was super, super impressed with how pigmented that was, so maybe we'll go in a slightly different direction today. I think I'm going to start by taking this brown, getting a little bit of that in my crease. Almost wish it were a little bit lighter brown. These Mad for Matte palettes, though, if you're not familiar with this like range that e.l.f. has done, they're really good. They've got a nice, like, super basic neutral one. I have the one that's got like purples and a little orangey tone in there, kind of like a Sunset Eyes matte palette. That one's great. I mean, the shadows tend to be pigmented, easy to blend out. So it's kind of interesting to see this really, really bright one. Is color returning? Like, is the trend of doing more colorful eyes like kind of becoming something more people are more comfortable with these days? Because I kind of feel like I'm seeing more brights creeping in to the marketplace, the makeup market, so to speak. I think I'm going to blend inward with some of this like Grey Poupon mustard color. You know, it's not yellow hot dog mustard, it's that Grey Poupon type Dijon. Just kind of blended the inner part of the crease with that and also buffing around the edge there. Now I would kind of like to do a nice lid pop, and I would love to see what this shade right here is made of. This kind of, you know, not true purple, but kind of like a red violet. You remember the red violet Crayola crayon? I'm gonna start patting this on the lid. It's got some punch. It's rich, you know, it's kind of a deep shade. I'm gonna basically go over the entire lid with that. That is a really gorgeous color tone. Then I think I'll dab into this kind of white color here on the end, and maybe do a little fading around the inner corner, like pulling up to the lid slightly. Now we've got this lovely, like, deeper wine color right next to that. So I think I'm gonna take a small brush and just kind of edge that out here into the crease. This is really an impressive little palette because, like I said, the blue was very strong that I used yesterday. I'm gonna kind of blend over the edge of that with a bare brush. I'm going to pop a little bit of the white also as a highlight up under the brow. And then, believe it or not, I have not played with the orange in here yet. So let's do that. You guys know I love the fusion of like a little orange, a little purple. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's pretty fun. I want to do a light shade in my lower inner rim. This is my Wet n Wild Ultimate Brow Highlight. And then I think I'll pull some more brown, just kind of right down in here. Maybe a little bit of the orange as well. Not really for the purposes of getting pure orange, but just to kind of warm up the color tone of that brown a little bit. I do not happen to have an e.l.f. liner or mascara, so I'm going to go ahead and do those steps real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay guys, I just kind of started doing this false lash and remembered, oh, I'm not recording right now, but it's from e.l.f., so I want to show you the other one going on here. It's the Lux Flash Kit in Flirtatious. I've worn these one time already. I did trim the length of the strip up just a little bit, like I took one small little segment off there. But these feel like a little better quality than e.l.f.'s earlier false lashes were. I had always complained that their false lashes were a little bit flimsy and like the band just always wanted to just kind of blah, just sit there and be straight. And these, the band is a little thicker, it has a bit more structure to it, but it's not so thick that, you know, I can't work with it. But they are a very lightweight lash. Now for lip products, I grabbed one new thing here. It's called Prismatic Lip Gloss, and it kind of reminds me of those glosses that Sigma put out. It kind of feels like it too, and I have it in rose quartz. So this could be like a lip topper, lip transformer. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on my bare lips so you can really see what the effect is that you get from it. See just a lot of like sheer shiny pink. The texture of this is awesome though. Nice little bit of thickness, but not sticky thick. Like you can really rub your lips together and it feels moisturizing, like a thick moisture feel. I do like that. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a very basic, like kind of nude shade, and we'll pop a little bit of this on top and just see what it does. So I have this from Makeup Revolution. It's Elite from the Life on the Dance Floor gold lipsticks. Elite is just like a classic nude with maybe a hint of pink in it. Maybe I'll add a little Essence Soft Contouring Lip Liner in Going Steady. Now for a little bit of this. It's doing a little something. Like, more than anything, I feel like I added a lot of shine, but the color from that gloss is just not very opaque. It is a beautifully textured gloss. I guess I'm just wishing it had a bit more color intensity. Yeah, this is my finished look, you guys. I really enjoy the eye look. This Mad for Matte eye palette in the Jewel Pop, I think is very, very impressive. I mean, for a low-cost selection of bright shades. If like you watched my Sephora Pro video and you're like, yeah, I'm not gonna spend $60-some on a bright eyeshadow palette, but I would like to have access to a few matte pops. This is a really fun little wardrobe of shades. My foundation. I like this foundation. I don't think it needed that added like kick of powder mixed in with it because like just between my eyebrows, different places, I feel like I'm seeing more texture than I normally would. But maybe there are some very, very oily people out there who that amount of powder added in would actually help the look and the staying power perhaps of the foundation. So I'm not saying it's an all-around bad idea. Plus you could also just use that powder loosely all over the skin. But for my skin type, I just don't see that as an essential like step that I'm gonna love doing all the time or anything. Completely awesome thing that's worth checking out are their mineral infused blushes and the bronzer. You know, that particular shade of bronzer, the lightest shade, is a little too light to show up too much on my skin, so maybe one of the two deeper shades would have been better. But as far as just the texture and the blendability of those shades on the skin, I think they're super high quality. Sorry, I'm just bouncing randomly all over what's in my basket here, but this peachy toned under eye setting powder, I would just rather use something that's a whole lot more brightening on that area. The brows certainly did the job. I just felt like it was depositing a lot more color in my brows than I needed. The lip color, it's just okay for me, dog. Yes, it's shiny. Yes, it feels good, but I do wish it had more actual color rather than just being so darn sheer. The Lux Flash Kit in Flirtatious, I definitely like. Really like the collab product from That's Heart with the split pan glowy bronzer highlight. That was a really effective highlight. And I know what you're all really sitting on the edge of your seat for is what about that post-workout cool down mist gimmick, basically. I mean, just use a setting spray that you like. I feel like the mist and set that's half the price of this works every bit as well. Anytime you mist your face with something, it's gonna feel refreshing to an extent. So just use whatever scent and product you like. I will say though, few things are more refreshing than the Mario Badescu cucumber and green tea. That one's really just, I love that. But thank you guys for inquiring about new e.l.f. stuff and urging me to try more. I really like just hanging out and doing these full face looks for you. I hope you could take me seriously at all, just, you know, with these bunny ears on. But in the spirit of Easter, I'm not taking them off. So thank you guys for watching and I will see you soon. Bye.